A letter from the river merchant's wife. When my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played about the front gate pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat, playing with blue plums, and we went on living in the village of Chokan, two small people without dislike or suspicion. At 14, I married my Lord Yu. Being bashful, I never spoke. Lowering my eyes, I turned to the wall, called to 1,000 times. I never looked back. At 15, I stopped scowling. I desired my dust to be mingled with yours forever and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout? At 16, you departed. You went into the far Kotu Yen by the river of swirling eddies, and you've been gone 5 months. The monkeys make sorrowful noise overhead. You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now, the moss has grown, the different mosses too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August over the grass in the west garden. They hurt me. I grow older. If you're coming down through the narrows of the River Chang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you as far as Chofu Sa. On behalf of the trustees of the Griffin Poetry Prize, Carolyn Forche, Sarah Howe, Ilya Kaminsky, Aishin Hutchison, Karen Soley, Alesh Steger, and Ian Williams, I want to welcome everyone to an evening of poetry at Koerner Hall. Now the judges, 3 judges, always 3 judges. The judges are Andrea Cote, a poet from Colombia in South America, Luke Hathaway, a Canadian poet from the Maritimes, and Major Jackson, a poet from the United States. These poets have had to read 461 books of poetry and reduce those to just 5, which are represented by the poets you see on the stage here. That is a major task. And on behalf of the trustees, I want to thank the judges for their enormous contribution to this year's prize. Now, unfortunately, one of the finalists, Gbenga Adesina, a wonderful poet from Nigeria, is not with us this evening. He was unable to get a visa from Canadian immigration in time. However, Ian Williams, our trustee, will read his poetry, and I'm sure he will do a great job. The judges are going to introduce the poets who will read for 10 minutes each, following which there'll be an intermission. And so I'm now going to ask Andrea Cote to come up and introduce our first reader. Thank you.
Good evening. I am sincerely honored to be here with you tonight. Serving on the jury of the 2026 Griffin Poetry Prize has been a deeply humbling experience, one that has reaffirmed my belief in poetry's power to create meaningful connections across languages, cultures, and borders. I have the pleasure of introducing the first shortlisted collection of the evening, Death Does Not End at the Sea, by Gbenga Adesina. Part lament, part invocation, This collection weaves together voices in an intergenerational song where migration becomes the passage through which life and death inhabit a single continuous body. Shaped by lyrical precision and resonant imagery, Adesina's poetry speaks to the spectral multitude whose lives bear the weight of history and displacement. Unfortunately, Gbenga Adesina is unable to be with us this evening, but in his place, poet and Griffin Poetry Foundation trustee Ian Williams will read from the collections on the poet's behalf. So please, welcome.
Hello, good night, everyone. This is my favorite poetry event on the calendar every year. And I always leave it feeling like a bit of an anniversary, that you fall more deeply in love with poetry every year. You don't think you can fall in love more. And then after tonight, you're a little bit more deeply in love with poetry. So as has been mentioned, I'm going to read from Gbenga's collection, Death Does Not End at the Sea, a collection largely about the death of his father. I'll start with a poem called Coma. It's a sequence. When the call came, it was my mother. There was a strange velocity on her tongue. Time was both beginning and at the end in her mouth. She was saying, "Come, please come, quick. It's about your father's body." I ran. I ran with the horses and the horse's scar of birth inside me. I ran with the wing trembling inside my name toward the room of death. At the door of the ICU, we, my brothers, sisters, and I, were stopped and given nose masks before we were allowed inside. The dreams of those who lay dying, we were told, was a thing one could inhale. The shock of iodine to the nose, smell of hospitals, dull fluorescent lights, a cluster of faces surrounded a body covered in a blue paper gown. His head was fresh with a wound, a red gash. He lay so still. Even his mother's name must have been frozen inside him. I saw then his chest rising and falling, rising and falling. He was breathing. "Father, you are alive." I moved toward him and saw. No, it was the tube connected to him that was breathing inside him. I fell to my knees. My mother put her mouth to my father's ear, Christ to Lazarus, and said, "Wake up, I command you, wake up. You belong to me. Your body, clove, rosemary, bread, it belongs to me. Rise on this third day. I know your name. Wake up. Please do not fail me." On the fourth day, we formed a circle around his bed and began to read to him. The brain, Ornette Coleman teaches us, is a conversation. He loved the language of the epics. There was a book I had been secretly writing for years. It was a book of silence, the silence between father and son. I held it in my hands now, a small offering. He responded with silence. Later that evening, in a quiet voice, the doctor said, "I'm sorry, your father is now brain dead." "Father, Is a book a stone of silence? I'm going to skip to the front of the book, the very first poem, well, the second poem. It's called I Carried My Father Across the Sea. He was a child. He was dead. He was the shaft of a long-tailed astrapia. He was a forest of bruise. He wore a door on his face. He wore the black suit of his wedding. The square pocket was still full of his vows. He was light to carry. His burdens and vows had bled out of him. He was heavy with the responsibility of the dead. What sort of a son leaves his father chained to fatherhood? I lifted and propped him up with my frame. I measured the length of him with my length. The feet stuck in sea sand, his weak knees, his arms gripped my sides. As the currents rose, the collar on his broken neck flared into a float. The gash the surgeon's knife left on his head became a halo. It signaled in the dark. I put my nose to his nose. I put my finger in his mouth. I tied his ivy tubes, now a human gill, around our waists and swam in the vein of the water. Look, a sphinx in the waves said, a son carries his father. Death is not silence. It is where I hear you most clearly. What sort of a son leaves his father's body, chained to the dark grievance inside the earth? I carried my father on my back. I felt the bracing inside his afterlife heart on the skin of my spine. He wore his face as a door he promised to open to me. He bled out his vows. The grief is so complete. I'm sorry to begin this way, but you can thank or blame Gbenga for this, right? Last poem in the book. I'll end with this one. And Gbenga, I know you're watching. Thank you for writing. It's called Elegy of Hands. It is that my hands are also my father's hands, and where the lines meet on the palm, both of us have met and sat, each with his own silence, not speaking. It is not that we are fighting. It is the shape of love we have come to. He keeping to his script of being dead, and I doing the pose of the living in retaliation. It is the shape of love we have come to. On my way to the train this morning, I cut through a small field of elms and birches and thought I saw from afar a white cluster, a crown of egrets that had landed on the ground. But really it was a cemetery. It was as though the gravestones were holding hands. It was the kind of thing that would have made him laugh, gravestones holding hands. I say this to him as he sits beside me. And yes, he laughs. He reaches out his hand toward me. I pretend to not see his hands. I keep to the pose of the living. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. I have to say it is particularly meaningful to me as a Latin American poet to have the opportunity to introduce Daniel Borzutzky and Alec Schumacher, translators of bodies found in various places, selected poems of Elvira Hernández, one of the great poetic voices of the Spanish language today. Hernández's iconic poem, The Chilean Flag, included in this collection, first circulated clandestinely during the dictatorship. It would take many years before it finally appeared in print. The poem stands as a powerful testament in which every word becomes an act of reckoning with reality, a gesture of repair for our wounded Americas. In translator Hernández's complex and singular poetic voice, Borzutzky and Schumacher meet a formidable challenge with remarkable sensitivity. Their ability to preserve the unsettling and destabilizing force of her writing allowed these poems to reach us today with all their deep urgency and power. Please join me in welcoming Daniel Borzutzky, Alec Schumacher, and Elvira Hernández.
Good evening. Thank you, Andrea, for that lovely introduction. Thank you, Ian and Gbenga, for that wonderful reading. Bodies Found in Various Places includes work from 6 books from Elvira's remarkable career, written between 1981 and 2018. This is really just a small portion of her enormous and incredible body of work. Tonight we're going to read from 3 of those books, Pena Corporal, or Corporal Punishment, written from 1983 to 1987 and published in 2018, Santiago Guaria, which was published in 1992, and La Bandera de Chile, or the Chilean Flag, which, as Andrea mentioned, was written in 1981, circulated clandestinely during the dictatorship, and was published in 1991.
No encuentro la horma de mi zapato. El traqueteo infernal me deja sin pies. Los empellones, las sobajaduras, la pisada sin querer, tiene un nombre de silencio infinito.
I can't find my shoe tree. The infernal crackling leaves me without feet. The pushing, the manhandling, the accidental step has a name of infinite silence.
No encuentro bailarín para la danza. Hago el solo, el loco, la gallinita ciega, la dama de la triste figura en la pantalla, sellada por el tiempo como crisálida eterna.
I can't find a dancer for the dance. I do the solo, the crazy, the blind man's bluff. La dama de la triste figura plays on the screen, sealed from time like an eternal chrysalis.
No encuentro viento para mi molino, aire, alas, sábanas que oreen el hastío. Bajo el botadero de la ciudad del mañana, las computadoras me han caducado el contrato.
I can't find wind for my mill, air, wings, bed sheets to ventilate boredom. Beneath the garbage dump in the city of tomorrow, the computers have timed out the contract.
No encuentro ya amparax inmediato, insostenido mi músculo, intranquila mi sangre.
I can't find an immediate lorazepam, listless, my muscle, restless, my blood.
Yo pecador.
I, sinner.
1. Me confieso de haber visto ojos pegados a las espaldas como si fueran imanes.
1. I confess to having seen eyes stuck to backs as if they were magnets.
2. Iluminar la noche más oscura con soles infrarrojos en el film de la ciudad.
2. Light up the darkest night with suns, infrared in the film of the city.
3. Abrir corazones como se abre una nuez con la foto de un niño.
3. To open hearts like cracking a nut with the photo of a child.
4. Tener los ojos polarizados donde no entra brizna de ojo humano.
4. To have polarized eyes where no wisp of human eye can enter.
5. Tener un pene miniaturizado apetecido por las madres de la patria.
5. To have a miniaturized penis desired by the mothers of the fatherland.
6. Me confieso de saber que los árboles crecen con follaje direccional diversificado.
6. I confess to knowing that trees grow with directional foliage diversifying.
7. Y saber a ciencia cierta que el silencio es una gran oreja que escucha.
And to know, 7, and to know for certain that silence is a giant ear that listens.
8. De tirar piedras al río como si fueran bultos o viceversa.
8. To throw stones into the river as if they were body bags, or vice versa.
9. De grabar el ritmo de sangre de los RH positivo y los RH negativos.
9. To record the rhythm of RH positive blood and RH negative.
10. De proporcionar mis cuidados intensivos y otras medicinas a muchos vecinos.
10. To provide more intensive care and other treatment for my neighbors.
11. De abrirle la cabeza a un escritor cualquiera y vaciársela con mi polígrafo.
11. To open the head of any writer and empty it with my polygraph.
12. Me acuso de esto y de mucho más y de no estar condenado para nada.
12. I blame myself for this and much more, and I'm not being sentenced to anything.
J. Recalco, no cambiaré ni una jota de lo escrito. The Poetry Does Not Matter. Se perdieron 20 años de nuestras vidas. Fue una lotería arreglada. Nunca supimos cómo se conquistaban las ganancias ni que la vida fuese tan loca. El tropelista jugó bolos con nuestros huesos. Nos ganó el quien vive en una mesa de trucidamientos y vivisecciones. Nos condenó a caminar por la calle de la morgue que es la avenida La Paz. Los jueces dormían el sueño que sigue al almuerzo. Somos ambulantes, callejeros, con 20 años muertos a nuestras espaldas como una joroba o una pierna lisiada, imposibilitados de escalar el futuro. No queremos trato especial. Nos corresponde la ruleta rusa. Recalco, se perdieron 20 años de nuestras vidas. Mente clara.
Jot. I insist I won't change a jot of what I've written. La poesía no importa. 20 years of our lives were lost. It was a rigged lottery. We never found out how they conquered the market nor how life could be so crazy. The trooper went bowling with our bones. We were beaten by the one who lives on a table of dismemberments and vivisections. He condemned us to walk down the morgue street that is Avenida La Paz. The judges slept the sleep that follows lunch. We are wanderers, strays, with 20 years dead at our backs, like a hunchback or a lame leg, unable to climb the future. And we don't want special treatment. We get the Russian roulette. Let me stress, 20 years of our lives were lost. Clearly.
M. Puntos suspensivos. Tanto vuelo angélico y elevadas propulsiones, tanta maravilla embotellada y planeos discursivos, tanto brillo henchido como genealogía importada, tanta cordillera y mar y cielo y tierra, tanta mineralogía, tanta verdura y Antártica famosa, tanta hembra y entresijo, tantas constelaciones, cuántas humanas luces, tanto amor o igual empuje, tanto, tanto, tanto y nada.
Ellipsis. So much angelic flight and lofty propulsions.
So much bottled wonder and discursive gliding.
So much inflated brilliance like an imported genealogy.
So much sea and sky and earth and mountain.
So much mineralogy.
So much greenery and famous Antarctica.
So much female and intricacies.
So many constellations. How many human lights.
So much love or similar verve.
So much.
So much.
So much. And nothing.
La bandera de Chile no se vende.
The Chilean flag is not for sale.
Le corte la luz, la dejen sin agua.
They may cut off her power, leave her without water.
Le machuquen los costados a patadas.
Kick her ribs while she's down.
La bandera tiene algo de señuelo que resiste. No vale la sentencia de los jueces.
The flag has something of allure that resists. The judges' sentences don't matter.
No valen las trizas de hilo curado. La bandera de Chile al tope.
The halyards of aged thread don't matter. The Chilean flag, her limit reached.
La bandera de Chile es usada de mordaza y por eso, seguramente por eso, nadie dice nada.
The Chilean flag is used as a gag. That's why, surely that's why, no one says anything.
Izar, arriar.
Raise, lower.
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 En la rutina, la bandera de Chile pierde su corazón y se rinde.
In the routine, the Chilean flag loses heart and gives in. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Major Jackson. Aracelis Girmay is a poet and editor. Her poems and essays have been widely published. A finalist for the Neustadt International Prize for Literature, she is a recipient of a Whiting Award. Her books have been named finalists for the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. Aracelis is on the editorial board of the African Poetry Book Fund. Green of All Heads is her fourth full-length collection. She lives in the East Bay, San Francisco, teaches at Stanford. Green of All Heads is seductive for many reasons, not least of which the book calls us to the rituals of grieving, of inhabiting language that profoundly names at once a familiar and distinct world. The judges were astonished at the pitch of her revelations, her compassionate mind. Here, too, are the pleasures of a child's wonder, the delight in imagining history as more than a record of the mighty, but a space where we pass into each other's lives with profound grace. Please welcome Aracelis Girmay.
Wow, it's tremendous to be with you all. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Looking forward. So I'm going to read a couple poems, obviously. And the book is really pulling from thinking about the death of my brilliant, beautiful father, and also early motherhood and how strange time is when you're watching an aging person and a baby and then young person finding their ways. And so this first poem is called Ceremony for Remembering the Doorless World, and it thinks about that strangeness of time. October, where three wee horses mark ground, turn snake our necks inside the guayla circle my aranshi, etan, child fox out my fourth mouth, you drank, then the year went dark, and our own flowers and fires and what we thought we were, though still our faces open to the whooping of coyotes at the canyon rim, how they throw their voices out, falling starless veils of lace over our still black heads. Awake, I sit, sentried with all my sight, and the purple fennel musting after rain, this hour become my canyon, become my bottom of the world, listening for your breaths to ward off non-breath. Parent, my son, a flicker barely born, already withstand the blanched eye of our grief. One morning with our faces crying into the arroyo, it answers, once there were no doors on earth, not a single one. So when I listen, I still hear you still kicking the ball, laughing as you say the story of endurance. And the women flutter, a flock of sound suddenly lifts, they throw their voice birds over the birth, so we are three in simultaneous earths inside your coil of father hair, to which I press my ear to hear the histories, then the bell, then the whirl, the whir of doctors above your beds, your noiseless struggle to be. Stay, say, you are my hears and furthers. Daddy, now I join the mothers. Remember when you were a little boy, I used to hold you. Notes for a sound you were, and the poet I'm thinking about is the great Jean Valentine. And it's the poet I mentioned at the top. And it's written, again, to my dad, GK. He was very efficient, and his name is Girmay Kaleta, but he would sign GK. Notes for a sound you were, GK. To learn from the poet who, it seems to me, having searched and found the words behind the gates, unlatched one after the other and watched them run to another energy. Some violet, brain with vitality, some tired, strong, willing themselves toward the morning. So in the lead's gray trace, I pull your name out of my live hand, trying to write the notes for a sound you were, that ran out of this life you have gone out of, so that I may follow you. Where? We played the tape then, death. We turned the tape over. I felt briefly bright with your mother's eye when I read your name on the sticker of your finished casket. It sobered me of grief 1 second, how wrong it was, of rage I was, the font and code, something I wasn't supposed to see, a corporate coffee order receipt to die in the US industry. But her eye was a god. It flashed in me as a flash of ice, like in Asmara. It took you off. It had done it before. Or should I say she had done it before. Not a sound I could make, not even human, though my humanness was a part of it, a material point, a filament of time through which she surged. Stone by stone, I knew then, each of our heads built around a star, then death, then carry what can be carried onto another star. And I'll close with these 2 shorter poems. This animal, nearly done, hunched against the curb's low wall, poisoned, pained into frantic stillness. By what do I feel she is a woman rat, her stoic outcast labor, her injury among the trash and cups and carts. Like any of us, maybe she was cared for in the beginning of her life and then was left, will not recover the ones to whom she belonged. Not last, not less, just sad, lone, ash, just that, where are her people? Somehow my mind is with her, scattered, stray, the small tongue of this animal whose world this was. It's in here. Green of all heads left open at the top. In the presence of the trees, I carry my sorrows below their branches. Probably always I overhear our say to the children, the air, full of memory. Where have you been? Trying, pebbles of words. I am learning to lift my voice like a flower in a field of flowers. Sometimes I hear you, all heads left open at the top. Through mine I wonder now.
Thank you, poets, for these beautiful readings. Thank you, readers and listeners. I'm Luke Hathaway. My pronouns are he and him, and with Andrea Cote and Major Jackson, whom you've already met, I had the great privilege of getting to serve on the jury this year and have this kind of immersion in poetry and also in conversation about poetry with Major and Andrea, which has been one of the great pleasures of my life. I'm here now to introduce to you our next poet, Ange Mlinko. I opened Ange Mlinko's book, Foxglove Wise, and read its first poem, Tarpon Springs Epiphany. And then I just kind of closed the book, overwhelmed by the sense of surfeit that comes upon me when I read a poem that is itself a world entire. And at the same time, I'm beginning an inauguration of a lifetime of rereadings. Like the understanding that I didn't have to rush it, my experience of this poem or of this book, because I was going to be coming back, and I was going to be coming back again and again. If you don't know Ange Mlinko's work, I'm excited for you to be vouchsafed this beginning. And if you do know it, then hello, fellow traveler. I greet you wherever you are in your journey of deepening and widening understanding and delight. Though these poems are deep and layered and profound and polyglot and elusive and fun, there is also something matter-of-fact about them, a kind of workmanlike decorum that says, all right, that's done, that's made, and dusts its hands and returns to the work of waiting, to see if it might ever again be vouchsafed to the maker to create another thing like that. Nobody knows, and yet we hope. Friends, please join me in welcoming to the podium the very great poet, Ange Mlinko.
Thank you so much, Luke. I'm overwhelmed. I'm thrilled to be in this company tonight. So I'm going to read that first poem, Tarpon Springs Epiphany. This book, like this evening, is much about the catchment of other languages within English. And this has an epigraph, I almost said epitaph, an epigraph by W.H. Auden. For every high C accurately struck demolishes the theory that we are the irresponsible puppets of fate or chance. Maria Callas came to our banal climate, age 5, wearing her first pair of glasses, so that perhaps the fizz of palms was the first thing to come into focus. In time, she might have seen the crucifix dive at Epiphany, when rain like a jeweler taps gingerly into the crystal of a water crocus. At 5, she was known as Mary Kalogeropoulos, and if I could, I would tell her how my relatives changed their amphibrachic name to Bass, gaining intelligibility despite melismatic loss, the Slavic sonics of affricates and fricatives. They pronounce it like the fish, not the tonal range, alas. But her lossy name provides its own gloss. Let mine underwrite hers like a bass line, as though I had her otherworldly ear. I attended to the Greek boys diving for their cross as a girl released a white dove from the shrine of her consecrated palms. We watched it disappear. If Callas preferred to perform sans lenses, leaving the concert hall a gold vermilion blur, was it to shield her conscience from the world so that she moved and sang in fictive stanzas? Dives and songs that would disclose our nature are from one held breath methodically unfurled. Yes, here's a rump of Poseidon's kingdom. In the gift shops, St. Michael spears the basilisk and Medusa rears her seething skull. Some coral are classified as Gorgonian, Some petrified bodies, the treasure hunter's frisk, might have been her victims turned to marble. The descendants of those divers will now dive for the crucifix in white tees, fresh from Mass, processing barefoot down the main drag behind their priest. A liturgical singer's baritone comes to us live from the bayou's edge, where sacerdotal gulls amass, and the modal melodies strike our ear as from the east. They blessed the boats on Thursday at the docks. By Friday, the wind was high, and late in the night came torrents. To cancel a dive because of showers creates an elemental paradox. But here was the miracle. The rain took flight, the clouds blew off at the behest of unseen powers. Now the procession halted at the bayou, and the priest took over from the singer, though he wasn't singing exactly, but neither did he speak, or rather, he spoke in circles, as rhymes do, a sermon on water. That little of its flow was in English, some diverted into Greek, excited me like screams to the angelic orders. For isn't a foreign language the beginning of terror? May I ask the diva if I briefly have her ear? The boys leaped, and in the maelstrom, towards the center, one surfaced, the cross-bearer. He was borne on shoulders back to the pier, all handsome as cherubs halfway to turning seraphim. The crowd erupted in applause. Meanwhile, the terns, facing the proceedings, crossed their wings behind their backs. Their X'd tips had a darker trim, as a soprano may have colors our ear discerns when the language disappears in what she sings. This is Elegy and Bourbon. We live on a thin crust. I can hear the Kentucky Derby on the widescreen, perched on its eyrie over the bar in Terminal E. I can hear, that is, the crowd roar, the unseen announcer's commentary, but I can't hear the hooves. We live on such a thin crust the horses could break through it. I am 3 generations, give or take, off the farm. History's forces tear you by the root. So no, I don't know a horse's gallop from a canter. But that I can't hear their thunder makes me ponder the thin crust we live on, a short drop from the window, the runways that bear aircraft touching down yonder, the cracks spawned by their weight. A whole city can grow in the fissures left by a volcano. The volcano go dormant, a glacier scour its spate of basalt. Tectonic seizures expose the devil's footprint, cloven. Auden called it his mutterland, the limestone of the Pennine chain. My limestone landscape has no mountains, lies flat as a hand on a Bible, pummeled by rain, where plants that live on air can grow. And then, over Jersey, the terrain stretches outside my porthole all the way to the Delaware River. This is where I've gone again and again to bury my few people in an Orthodox cemetery. Never did inter my father's ashes, lost when my brother had the house cleaned out. I cringe to think where their resting place must be, tossed on some landfill on his old commute. And I didn't get my share of their languages either. This one is all I have. Its source has come to serve as my thin crust. After I got the call in London, I stumbled up the back stairs of a museum to see a mummy not yet gone to dust. A whole room full of dinner services and tea sets. A higher order, for all intents and purposes, dynastic. The mint walls and the glass were cooling ices, the ceramics like white glazed patience touched with tact in a hospital clinic? Isn't porcelain made of the finest clay? But piece by piece, a family goes to pot. I pictured myself a shard, earthenware to mislay, liable to mislabeling in some entrepot, not on any museum shelf. Such a thin shell we tread, like an egg. They pursue me to the gate, the silent hooves, from a bar called The Explorer, where I drink before my last leg. I worry, so transient are my loves, living on air, my words are poor. This book is bookended by a pair of cemeteries, one Scottish and one in LA, where many celebrities are buried with names different from the ones they were born with. So I wrote the cemetery of pseudonyms. Marilyn Monroe, for instance, is not named in the poem, but implicit here. Where do stargazers go in a city of light? Here where shadows draw back lids on the abyss, where trees raise a toast, blossoms brimming to the height at which a note will crack, where it's your word against your dust. The area initially seems too small to accommodate so many pharaohs and consorts. Reduced as an amphora to its handle, the person, after all, may be shelved neatly in rows and archived in the font of her era. Up, down, and across, the crypts feature mid-century names which, used properly to be faces, and typed at that. The scripts graven into plates have the same effect as an iconostasis. As though this were a tumulus accidentally excavated where parking was planned, the empty flower sconces look like libation flutes that sated the gods with a tip of the hand. Note the burial of the burial ground inside a city block incognito. Din of traffic, sunlight enough for a star to hide in. Are we bound to the soil we're born or consigned to? Or do we root in the air like an epiphyte? Those unplanted plants, they would be like words whose roots trail into myth, a mixed medium, no monolith. Likewise, our souls are in our names, which flee the gravestone, and like the moth, invent themselves out of whole cloth. It is none other than Apollo driving a yellow SLK 320 on the 405. When I see him again at the Getty, our Acropolis, it said, I'm slow to absorb the lesson I am given. A God's name has no etymology. Thank you.
Kevin Young is the author of 16 books of poetry, including Stones, a finalist for the T.S. Eliot Prize, Blue Laws, Selected and Uncollected Poems, 1995 to 2015, longlisted for the National Book Award, Book of Hours, winner of the Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize from the Academy of American Poets, and the Gray Album, winner of the Gray Wolf Press Nonfiction Prize and the PEN Open Book Award. His recent picture book, A Mill in the Field, was named one of the best children's books of the year by the New York Times. The jurists found Night Watch attentive to historical forces and virulent ideologies that we still encounter today, as well as to his own inner barometer, where art, geography, music meld into a literary performance of high regard. There's a radical reinvention of poetic lineage, an experimentation that reflects poetry's improvisatory spirit and its life-giving conversations. The book's sonic landscape pulled us closer to a music we felt with each reading. We turn to poetry to encounter souls unafraid to reveal themselves in the daylight, the essence of our being is found there. All else is performative. The truthfulness of some poets we find charming, clever, wildly imaginative. But we are also drawn to those poets who are forbidding, terrifying even, and laying bare the acute sense of our immortality and the majesty and miracle of our existence. Please welcome Kevin Young.
Thank you. Thank you, Major. It's such an honor to be here tonight. I'm reading from Night Watch, which is a book that took 16 years to write. It's a book that begins in Louisiana, where my family is from, and ends with a sequence riffing off Dante's Inferno and the rest of the Divine Comedy, which is the sequence I'm going to read from tonight. Don't worry, I won't read the whole thing, but I thought we'd start in hell and try to make it to heaven together. This is The Orchard. The orchard, wounded, the dead wait and do not heal. Instead, it's we, the living, relearning to walk and to wake, the smudge of lips or blood, breath. We're helpless, cannot help but help ourselves and hope. The lizard, who knows loss means escape, grows his tail back within a week. My father-in-law, who lost his spleen at 20, has since grown back, not one, but many. The dog, three-headed, docked, chases where once his tail wagged and was, each of us, this orchard of scars. Beyond. What if the body is what we bring with us beyond? It is the soul, stays here, sullen, inconsolable, not so much wandering as waiting to be found, reunited, dirtied in the end. It is enough then to see the soul let loose only in those moments of ecstasy, not when we leave our body, but when our body arrives finally, and our soul sups, fed like the dead, hands hungry as stray gloves. Fingers may fill them, but still they need the noun of the soul's smell, its plangent personhood. The more they eat, the more they need. The body always becoming, who verbs its way over and under while the soul rocks in the old folks' home. The soul who shivers, grown suddenly cold. Underworld. We are born with all our grief already in us, like teeth. And time works it out of us, our mouths, pain for a spell, and then there grief sits, a lifetime, shiny, lucky, pomegranate, made before I was unmade, if not, the gaps where once milk teeth sat, replaced by these holes we hope to eat with, each supper a reckoning. That's enough hell for now, I think. This is from the Purgatory section, which is called Werewolf Hill. And you'll remember that Dante's conception of purgatory is a stair, a winding kind of spiral, a stairway to heaven, if you will. And so this first poem is about Keats, who you'll recall died in Rome. The stair. The heart, it hoards. How I know this. The small, strangled, shining room Keats lost his life in and to. Beyond the window, sunlight arranging itself on the Spanish steps, while the poet watches. Sweet azure of the East. Outside, snapshots of the tourists and teenagers tired of what they don't know yet. What will become of us? Ash, unasking. The death mask made of Keats, no longer breathing. Look at it, not look at us. Beyond the window, the stairs stretch heavenward, stranded, without 1 ounce of shade. All the writers ended up in purgatory in the book. I didn't mean that to happen, but you'll remember that Dante says the difference between purgatory and hell is hope, so there's hope for us yet. Tulips. What the dead want: shelter, opposable thumbs, to quit being compared to taxes as if they can be evaded. Each April, sadly wiser and alone, they push up like tulips from the earth, perennial as pain. Trouble me again. This is called Ledge. Ledge. No use telling the dead what you've learned, since they've learned it too. How to go on without you. The mercy of mourning or moving. The light that persists, even if. Beauty is as beauty does, my mother says, who is beautiful and speaks loud so she can be understood, unlike poets who can't talk to save their lives, so they write. It's like a language loss can be learnt only by living there. What anchors us to this thirst and earth? Its threats and thinnesses, its ways of waning and making the most of worse and much worse, if not this light lifting up over the ridge. And that we will make it to heaven, it turns out. This poem is called Faith. Faith. How do the small birds in the street know how not to die? That whatever they gather, hunger for, is never enough to keep them in the road when our wheels bear down upon them. They feast on what I cannot see, then fly away and sing. Yellow Jacket. The way wasps want your house to be their house, so the dead try and make your home their own. They move in, promising to stay only a week, luggage stuffed with old clothes and tinted photographs. Building their houses of paper, buzzing, they draw the curtains, de-silver the mirrors, till years later, look about and it's your life the dead are living. Wake and rub the night from your eyes. The paper fetched wet from the yard, the paid death notices and ads for living longer unread. Mine, not the wings for such a flight. Each day, later than you like, the lonely postman force feeds words into the hungry mouth of the mailbox, where this small dunning bird has begun its brittle, briefest nest. And this last poem's called Altarpiece. I've come down with a case of paradise. I've contracted Eden fever. I'm flushed with the wish to be allowed to stay, to watch the maples turn from saplings to trunks it takes 4 men to topple. I've looked around and found myself like hell, no more livable than believed, like a kite, the light tangled in the trees. The dead won't meet your eye. A strange dog you should greet, fingers tucked under, head averted. The dead don't bite but bark and claw your door all night. This fever of mine has no father to feed it, no end the going, then going on. The fury of bees, feed me till I sleep. The pennies lament. On a long journey, honey, the only thing that keeps. Nobody's good. Everyone lies. When I go, the only mourners will be flies. They arrive wearing black robes, almost polite. I am reborn with a billion eyes and rise at last, my head clear and singing like my wings. I am easy enough to find. Look for me where the rough dirt meets paved street, stones shining your shoes. I don't mind being mistaken for one of the shadows, courting the sun, how it clouds and without seeking cannot be seen. Know then the lush cover of what might be leaves, rain like a summons in the trees. Thank you.
Thank you to the judges for those introductions, and of course a huge thank you to the poets for a wonderful set of readings. So we're going to have an intermission, and during the intermission the poets' books will be on sale, and they've agreed to sign them at the end of the evening. The intermission will be approximately 20 minutes. Thank you.
De purgatorio. De purgatorio. De purgatorio. Mis amigos creen que estoy muy mala porque quemé mi mejilla.
From purgatory. My friends think I'm a sick woman because I burned my cheek.
22. Destrocé mi cara tremenda frente al espejo. Te amo, me dije. Te amo más que nada en el mundo.
22. I smashed my sickening face in the mirror. I love you, I said. I love you more than anything in the world.
¿Quién podría la enorme dignidad del desierto de Atacama? Como un pájaro se eleva sobre los cielos, apenas empujado por el viento.
Who could the enormous dignity of the desert of Atacama? Like a bird, it elevates itself over the skies, barely pressed by the wind.
Pastoral. Chile entero es un desierto. Sus llanuras se han mudado, sus ríos están más secos que las piedras. No hay un alma que camine por sus calles y solo los malos parecieran estar en todas partes. Ah, si tan solo tú me tendieras tus brazos, las rocas se derretirían al verte.
Pastoral. Chile is all desert. Her plains are gone and her rivers more parched than stones. Not one soul walks through her streets, and only the evil seem to be everywhere. Ah, if you would just hold your arms out to me, were they to see you, the rocks would thaw.
La vida nueva. Como una vergüenza que yo tenía, empecé a soñar. Mire, sí, soñé que estaba acurrucada contra la pared, igual que una india chamana, y que una gran cantidad de gente me rodeaba mirándose. Y yo toda sola, muerta de vergüenza, tratada de cubrirme. Iba a parir, y mi terror era qué hacer para cortarle el cordón a la guagua cuando ella saliera. Cada vez más encogida, ya no sabía dónde poner la vista, y lo único que quería era hacerme más chica y más chica, para desaparecer de los ojos que me observaban. Parí. Entonces le tomé el cordón con la boca y lo corté mordiéndolo. Creí que todo había pasado, pero detrás venía otra pujando. Cuando ya estaba fuera, también le corté el cordón con los dientes, pero todavía venía una más, y detrás de esa otra, y luego otra y otra más, que igual parí, una por una, rebanándole el colgajo a mordiscos. Entonces me fui para adentro y me vi entera las entrañas. Me veía como por una ventana transparente. Toda por dentro yo me miré y allí estaba el corazón umbilical colgando, igual que una tripa, goteando sangre.
The new life. Like shame that possessed me, I began to dream. Yes, ma'am, I dreamed I was huddled against the wall like a shaman Indian woman, and that all these people were around me, just looking at me, and all alone, ashamed to death, I tried to cover myself up. I was going to give birth, and I was terrified of not knowing how to cut the baby's umbilical cord. And when she came out, I was getting more and more hunched over and didn't know where to rest my eyes, and I only wanted to get smaller and smaller to disappear from the people that watched. I gave birth. Then I grabbed the cord with my teeth and cut, biting it. I thought it was all over. Then after that one came, another one pushed. When that one was already out, I also cut the cord with my teeth. But still another one, and after that another one, and then another and another, and like the others, I went on giving birth, one by one, gnawing off each flap of skin. Then I turned inward and saw all my entrails. I saw myself as if through a transparent window, all inside. I looked at myself, and there was the umbilical cord hanging like tripe cut, blood dripping.
Josefina Pesolo rompe a llorar frente a su nieto. 26 de marzo de 1986. Peña, anima della mia fede, peña y roca de mi amor nipote mio, sei bello ma cattivo. Tutto l'amore, todo el amor, piedra de mi pasión, pivote mío, arco de mis estrellas. Tu abuela te habla, tu vela y montón de piedras, a ti que te moriste. Desde el fondo de la tierra te habla y las palabras muertas se me agolpan en la boca para perdirte, para decirte que nadie en el mundo, que nadie te quiso como yo, que nadie te quiso así como yo, italiana orionda, abuela tuya y de la tua sorella, que nadie, nunca nadie en el mundo los amó tanto como yo. Ma dove ti sei perduto? Yo te levanto, yo te sostengo, yo te devuelvo la fe, pero dime dónde estás, dónde. Se vinieron los países, pero tú no estabas ni entre los nuevos ni entre los viejos. Se vinieron miles de naves voladoras, pero no eran el brillo de tus ojos. Se vinieron las estaciones del nuevo mundo, pero tú no estabas. No estaba la noche cubriéndolo todo. No estabas tú, mar de las estrellas. Ven ahora, lindo pequeño. Ya no juegues a las escondidas conmigo. Te moriste. Acércate ahora. Cubre mi lloro y miro.
Josefina Pesolo starts to weep in front of her grandson, March 26, 1986. Boulder, anima de la mia fede, boulder and bedrock of my love. Nipote mio, sei bello, ma cattivo. Tutto l'amore? My love, all of it, solid stone of my passion. Pivote mio, dome of stars, your abuela speaks to you. Your veli to you, pile of stones who died. From the bottom of earth, she speaks to you, and the dead words crowd my mouth, per dirte, to say to you that no one in the world, that no one loved you as I. That no one loved you as I, Italian by birth, your abuela and your sorella's abuela, that no one ever in the world loved you both so much as I, ma dove ti sei perduto? I'll lift you up, I'll hold you, I'll give you back your faith. But tell me where you are, where? The countries came, but you were not among the new or old. Thousands of flying ships came, but they were not the shine of your eyes. The stations of the new world came, but you weren't there. All things were not covered over by night. You were not there, sea of every star. Come now, lovely little one. Don't play hide and seek anymore. You died. Come close to me now, cover my weep. And look. Do I look?
De cantos amor desaparecido. Hay amor, quebrados caímos y en la caída lloré mirándote. Fue golpe tras golpe, pero los últimos ya no eran necesarios. Apenas un poco nos arrastramos entre los cuerpos derrumbados para quedar juntos, para quedar uno al lado del otro. No es duro ni la soledad. Nada ha sucedido y mi sueño se levanta y cae como siempre, como los días, como la noche. Todo mi amor está aquí y se ha quedado.
From Song for His Disappeared Love. Oh, love, broken we fell, and as I fell, I wept, looking at you. It was blow after blow, but the last ones weren't necessary. We barely managed to drag ourselves among the fallen bodies, to stay together, to stay one next to the other. Loneliness isn't hard. Nothing has happened, and my dream lifts up and falls like always, like days, like the night. All my love is here, and here it stays.
Pegado al mar y las montañas. Pegado a las rocas, al mar y a las montañas. Recorrí muchas partes. Mis amigos sollozaban dentro de los viejos galpones de concreto. Los muchachos aullaban. Vamos, hemos llegado donde nos decían, le grité a mi lindo chico. Goteando la cara me acompañaban los señores, pero nadie encontré para decirle buenos días. Solo unos brujos con Mauser ordenándome una bien sangrienta. Yo dije, están locos. Ellos dijeron, no lo creas. Solo las cruces se veían y los dos viejos galpones cubiertos de algo. De un bayonetazo me cercenaron el hombro y sentí mi brazo al caer al pasto. Y luego en él golpearon a mis amigos. Siguieron y siguieron, pero cuando les empezaron a dar a mis padres, corrí al urinario a vomitar. Inmensas praderas se formaban en cada una de las arcadas. Las nubes rompiendo el cielo y los cerros acercándose. ¿Cómo te llamas y qué haces?, me preguntaron. Mira, tiene un buen culo. ¿Cómo te llamas, buen culo, bastarda chica?, me preguntaron. Pero mi amor ha quedado pegado a las rocas, al mar y a las montañas. Pero mi amor, te digo, ha quedado herido en las rocas, el mar y las montañas. Ellas no conocen los malditos galpones de concreto. Ellas son, yo vengo con mis amigos sollozando. Yo vengo de muchos lugares, fumo y pongo con los chicos. Es bueno para ver colores, pero nos están cavando frente a las puertas. Pero nos están rajando, te digo, sí, lindo chico. Claro, dijo el guardia, hay que arrancar el cáncer de raíz, o sí, o sí. El hombro cortado me sangraba y era olor raro la sangre. Dando vueltas se ven los dos enormes galpones, marcas de TNT, guardias y gruesas alambradas cubren sus vidrios rotos. Pero nosotros nunca nos hallarán, porque nuestro amor está pegado a las rocas, al mar y a las montañas. Pegado a las rocas, al mar y a las montañas. Pegado a las rocas, al mar y a las montañas. Murió mi chica, murió mi chico. Desaparecieron todos, desiertos de amor.
bound to the rocks, the sea, and the mountains, bound, bound to the rock, the seas, and the mountains. I went all over. My friends sobbed inside the old concrete warehouses. The kids howled. Come on, we got to where they said, I yelled to my pretty boy. My face dripping, the gentleman came with me. But I couldn't find anyone to say good morning to, only some witches with a Mauser ordering a real bloody one for me. I said, you're crazy, and they said, don't believe it. Only the crosses could be seen in the two old warehouses covered by something. From one bayonet blow, they clipped my shoulder, and I felt my arm as I fell to the grass. Then with it, they beat my friends. They went on, but when they began to strike my parents, I ran to the urinal to throw up. Immense prairies formed with each heave, the clouds breaking the sky and the hills coming on. What's your name and what do you have, they asked me. Look, he's got a tight ass. What's your name, tight ass bastard bitch, they said. But my love is still bound on the rocks, the sea, and the mountains. But my love, I tell you, is still stuck on the rocks, the sea, and mountains. They don't know the goddamn concrete warehouses. They are them. I come with my friends sobbing. I come from all over. I smoke and hook up with the guys, just some old-fashioned hookup. It's good for seeing colors. I'm telling you, they dig us out at our doors. I'm telling you, they rip us apart. Oh, yes, pretty boy. Of course, said the guard, you have to yank the cancer from its root. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. My sliced up shoulder bled, and the blood, it was foul. If you turn around, you can see the two huge warehouses. Marks of TNT guards and thick barbed wire cover its broken glass. But they won't ever find us because our love is bound to the rocks, to the sea and the mountains. Bound, bound to the rocks, to the sea and the mountains. Bound, bound to the rocks, to the sea and the mountains. My girl died. My boy died. They all disappeared. Deserts of love.
Mi Dios no mira, mi Dios no oye, mi Dios no es. Mi Dios no mira, mi Dios no oye, mi Dios no es. Y eran aviones en fuego escribiéndose en el cielo, sobrevolando las irradiadas ciudades que iban subiendo en la inmensidad del alba, como lejanos sueños olvidados al despertar. Y son como brumosos prados que reaparecen en un sueño, o colinas desaparecidas de pronto, imágenes con jardines y niños que juegan a volverse cenizas bajo las abrasadas ciudades. Mientras los bombarderos del sueño y de la locura vuelven sobre ellas escribiendo en el cielo, mi Dios, ¿por qué? Mi Dios, no me oyes, amor mío, no me oyes. Y es la piel pavorosamente quebrada de un niño, el silencio pavorosamente quemado del amanecer. Se reportan miles de niños subiendo como pequeños soles en el amanecer. Se reporta el hongo del amanecer. Se reportan mares de ceniza y cielo bajo los cielos en fuga del amanecer.
My God doesn't look. My God doesn't hear. My God is not.
El último proyecto, 22 frases proyectadas sobre los acantilados, solo se verán desde el mar. Verás un mar de piedras, verás margaritas en el mar, verás un dios de hambre, verás el hambre, verás un país de sed, verás cumbres, verás el mar en las cumbres, verás esfumados ríos, verás amores en fuga, verás montañas en fuga, verás imborrables erratas, verás el alba, verás soldados en el alba, verás auroras como sangre, verás borradas flores, verás flotas alejándose, verás las nieves del fin, verás ciudades de agua, verás cielos en fuga, verás un paraíso vacío, verás que se va, verás no ver y llorarás.
The last project, 22 lines projected onto the cliffs, visible only from the sea. You'll see a sea of stones. You'll see daisies in the sea. You'll see a God of hunger. You'll see hunger. You'll see a country of thirst. You'll see peaks. You'll see the sea and the peaks. You'll see vanishing rivers. You'll see loves fleeing. You'll see mountains fleeing. You'll see indelible misprints. You'll see dawn. You'll see soldiers at dawn. You'll see auroras like blood. You'll see flowers erased. You'll see fleets withdraw. You'll see snows of the end. You'll see cities of water. You'll see skies fleeing. You'll see an empty paradise. You'll see it leave. You'll see not seeing. And you will weep.
Well, congratulations, Raúl Zurita and Deeny Morales, for a wonderful reading. These two have been reading together for 20 years. Raúl is described in the Yale Review as an artist of the grand gesture. His poetry has been scrawled in skywriting above New York City and bulldozed into the rock of the Atacama Desert in Chile. He has written a dozen books of poetry after being incarcerated and tortured by the Pinochet military junta. He's written poems of political resistance and testimony, condemning the atrocities of war, and the testimony condemning the corruption of language by the state under authoritarianism. A big thank you to Eve Egoyan, who for her performance on the piano, and Lior, Shamriz, and Chloé Griffin for the film. It was a moving tribute to a truly great Chilean poet, Raúl Zurita. Now I'd like to invite Luke Hathaway, who's already on the stage, to introduce this year's Canadian First Book winner, Joseph Kidney.
The poems in Joseph Kidney's perfectly titled book, Devotional Forensics, are unsentimental almost to the point of cruelty, yet they are animated by a reverence that leavens them, that makes them just possible to read. Reading them, I felt I was in the presence of a scientist whose fascination with the universe allows him to see past death and suffering, even as he also sees with and through them. And I felt in my own body the myriad crucifixions of which he speaks, not only the ones that bring us to our knees, but the ones of which we are at other times oblivious. Auden, of whom we've heard this evening, wrote famously, "About suffering they were never wrong, the old masters." This young master turns his gaze on suffering, moves it to the center of the frame. At the same time, he reminds us how sometimes it is the joy of transfiguration that happens off stage that goes unseen. Friends, prepare yourselves for the generously unillusioned sensibility of our Canadian First Book Prize winner, Joseph Kidney.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to start with just a few thank yous before I read some poems. To my family, my parents who are here, also for anyone watching the live stream, my brother, Carl, to Mariana, to the judges and to everyone at the Griffin Prize for this unbelievable honor, to everyone at my publisher, Goose Lane, out in Fredericton, who have been so receptive to and careful with this book of poems, to my editor, Tolu Olorantoba, who helped me to deepen and clarify the material on every page. And then finally, I've received guidance from several mentor figures throughout my career, but perhaps nobody was more instrumental than a great Canadian poet and novelist who passed away too young a few years ago. He was born in this city, lived in this province, and when in the early 2010s he was writer-in-residence at McGill University, he changed my life. So I'd like to dedicate this award to Stephen Heighton. Yes. Okay, enough emotion, time for some poems. A ghost of him that lets me. I have never known who does the letting in such commands as let there be light, as if the world were not so much made as allowed in a kind of prayer to nothing, which must, shadowed into synonym, look a lot like mourning, like lamentation. Sunlight apparently takes about 8 minutes to travel from its explosion to the act of turning Earth into an answer. Thawed, a bird alit on a gutter and lozenged its sore throat with singing. It thought about how behalf almost sounds like a verb for cutting in two. I realized the other day that I really only go to church once a year, and it's always on Good Friday. So I go and I hear about the death, and then I still don't know what happens after that. But I thought I would read for you my crucifixion poem. It has an epigraph from Anselm of Canterbury, which is non ergo potest hanc satisfactionem facere nisi Deus, which means basically you can't get no satisfaction unless God is the one doing it. So this is the écorché of James Legge. They were not satisfied with what they had seen painted on oak panels, linen, the gesso which grounded the image in a white that rose through the colors, lighting them from within. There, on the day of preparation, he hung like those flowers that shrivel at their most fluorescent. In a private gravity, he would seem to recline on the visual plane, a physical glitch, a fiction in the history of movement. Splayed in explanation, his arms had a casual grace, like arms that prepare the silence for a choir. But how had it actually looked when his limbs, marionetted by dislocation, managed, though could not but fail, to support the disaster of his body? When the weight, in a travesty of plenitude, stretched the machinery of his breathing into a posture of perpetual intake. Misters Causeway, Banks, and West, through one Mr. Carpew, surgeon and freelance teacher of anatomy, procured the body of a Mr. James Legg, a pensioner freshly hanged for killing a pensioner. Somewhere in London, the artists crucified the body and compared him to the Christs of Titian and Velázquez. Banks, the sculptor, made a cast in plaster of the body, and then the men relieved James Legg of his skin. Stripped to red infrastructure, he hung on the cross. But notice, said Carpew, the latissimus dorsi bellying out, lobe-like. Causeway said Rubens, after all, was closest. Banks thought Altdorfer and said so. West remained silent. West had fallen to his knees. Maury Point. Knowing the sea mostly as a receiver of the sun instilled a certain confidence in water. The light was like the strength implicit in muscle, obvious but covered. Cormorants, each the crotchet squiggle of a quarter rest, huddled on the shat-white rocks. Pelicans hung their DeLorean wings on the salt winds. What could be stranger than looking from a cliff at animals flying beneath you? Perhaps the dead observe the living this way from a fixed elevation, mulling the jump from one death to another, a rain that sows April into the air. Waves to me have always looked like the ocean petting the beach. There, there, it consoles. Here, here, I approve, as in it's clear who domesticated who. This is the final poem in the book, so I'll close with this. The title of the poem is Oscar de Vale, which is a phrase in Irish that gets translated in due time. It's a poem in 4 short parts. And yeah, thank you again for listening, and thank you for participating in this wonderful evening. Oscar de Vale. 1. My mother, by the orange snore of the electric fireplace, is playing solitaire on her iPad. She is always changing the subject. If the Catholics don't have time for women, I don't have time for the Catholics. There is rain sizzling cold on the skylight, or squirrels scarpering. Everyone's taking a turn for the worse, and she follows their declines with compassion, with curiosity, and with curious compassion. Her drink is water with a faint sting of lemon. 2. In our home, she was the farthest from home. For others, her accent had a snag and a warp entirely hidden from my brother and me. Maybe the voice they heard was an umbrella, bad luck to open indoors, bad luck because the people who raise a shelter within a shelter have traded too much for caution. She sets out a ramekin's worth of blueberries, humming the carcass of a song picked clean by years of remembering. I'll say a Hail Mary for you, she says, enough of the stage Irish. 3. She didn't forget the nuns of her childhood, the Deo Gratias, the Saecula Saeculorum, but somewhere along the way she traded religion for recycling. Its weekly offices to separate the hard from the soft plastics as one star differs from another star in glory. Here, if anywhere, was the refutation of use being our limit of involvement in the world. The aseptic broth cartons, their nacre-like inner foil, the bubble-lined mailers and discs of soiled cardboard cut from boxes of takeaway. In the morning, they are like the grass that grows to be mown and fragrant in the evening. 4. And in the evenings, she would help us get ready for bed, saying, Oscar the Veil, which meant and still means, open your mouth. And I opened my mouth, and she brushed away with elbows and vigor, almost as if she were cleaning a gutter. And later, I lay in the dark, scared to death and restlessness, not by what couldn't and was, but by what wasn't and could. And she would come and lie beside me, which, by simplifying, fortified, a lull, a numbness, a lumen. How, I'm not quite sure, but it would seem the point of lullabies to drop you off along the way as they carry on to somewhere else you cannot follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke, for the introduction, and Joseph, that was really very good. I look forward to hearing more poetry from you in the future. And now I'd like to take a couple of minutes only to bring you up to date about the trustees' initiative, which we call Poetry and Voix, or Les Voix de la Poésie. This initiative is a Canadian bilingual student recitation competition, which is really very important for three reasons. First, it introduces students to the beauty of language through poetry. And secondly, it hones in their public speaking skills, because it's not easy to stand up on a stage with just a microphone, no notes, and recite poetry in front of judges and a big audience, something that normally would put the fear of God in most adults. This project or initiative is now in well over 2,000 schools across Canada and in every province. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, these students, and this year there were over 10,000 students who memorized at least one poem. These students and the ones from previous years and those that will follow will serve as the future readership for poetry. Poets need an audience, and these students will serve as that audience. Now, we have this year, this evening, a student from the finals that were held in Quebec City, and she is Melody Ovuakporoyecha. Hope I got that right. And from St. Malachi's Memorial High School in New Brunswick. She is here with her mother, and she has agreed to recite a poem for us. So, Melody, over to you. We need...
I am Titilokwe Sonuga. I am gap-toothed black girl by corner of class, scribbling left-handed poetry on blank paper. Save the school's curriculum for later. I am overflowing tales by moonlight, trickling off the tip of my grandmother's tongue. You will find my mother tongue here. Fast and fluent Yoruba, crisscrossing English, hidden messages in prose and proverbs. Call it Yoruba-English. I am the miracle of melody, nestled deep in the groove of rich high-life rhythms, a child of the marriage of hip-hop and Afrobeats. You can hear our voices, pulsing beneath the skin of a talking drum, commanding hips to move without caution. But caution, this is where a woman is born. where she lends the infinite connection between her waistline and the baseline. I am sky-high Gele, bold and beautiful. Meet stretched skinny jeans, we redefine style, wear our stories around our necks and from our ears so we never forget the voices of ancestors. I am what they never taught you in history books. Legacies of age-old traditions, incantations of ancient groits, a nation of storytellers, the beautiful and the broken, the struggling and the surviving, the ones they said would never make it. This is who I am.
Well, that was fantastic, but you see what these students can do. They really get it. And now it's time to announce the winner of this year's Griffin Poetry Prize. And I'm going to ask Major Jackson to come up and tell us who it is.
Thank you for being an extraordinary audience this evening. I was sitting over there wondering about the wisdom of saying yes to this request of announcing the winner. It was never easy from the beginning. I want to thank Scott and Christine Griffin for this great honor on behalf of my co-judges, Andrea and Luke. I want to thank Ruth Smith and the entire Griffin family. And I also want to thank the trustees. Their spirit of service to the art, along with the founders of this great prize, is unmatched. And the fact that they themselves are extraordinary poets is an inspiration to us. So thank you, trustees. Andrea, Luke, and I have a new understanding of our hungers for the light that poetry brings, what Luke defined as riches, but also, too, for the distinct and sweet pleasures of being imprisoned by 461 books. We were held captive, but we never tired. We never tired of conversations that my friend Andrea said, we were always willing to be surprised by the unexpected. We addressed questions of poetry, the books, the purpose, what is it in our lives? One thing that emerged for us is that there is a psychology to the reading of poetry, one in which joy, revelation, and frustration are inevitable parts of the experience. This makes sense to me, for during the time that we're reading, our interior lives is making room to accommodate another human being's use of language, their particular idioms, their worldview, their passions, our shared histories. For the patient reader, it means negotiating and testing poetry's assertions, reveling in its anamorphic images that penetrate the dull veneer of our days, such that our lives seem refreshed and anew. It means hearing and overhearing visionary music, observing the width of our humanity that heretofore was unbeknownst. For me and my fellow jurists, I think we were delighted by the depth and passion in which all the books made us uniquely and distinctly aware of the expanse of our curiosities. In some cases, such as in Ange Mlinko's Foxglove Wise, the presence and surface of language brought forth histories that felt even more present. With Gbenga Adesina, we were haunted by the temporal layers of emotion attended with a migratory imagination. In the subversive, playful, and persistent spirit of making in Elvira Hernández, Bodies Found in Various Places, we were left breathless. The gorgeous arc of being alive and the work of grieving at Aracelis Girmay's Green of All Heads opened us up to realms of knowing that felt like an intentional act of generosity. And Kevin Young's Night Watch moved with particular grace that reminded us of the motion of poetry that aims to make our histories sing. We were continually moved by the transformative vision of these 5 poets. I am delighted to announce on behalf of Andrea and Luke that the winner of the 2026 prize is Kevin Young for his book, Night Watch.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Gosh, I don't know where to start, but this book, as I said, took 16 years to write, so I have lots of people to thank. I want to, first and foremost, thank Scott and Christine Griffin. And what a wonderful prize this is. I want to thank the judges, of course, but I also want to thank my fellow finalists who are so tremendous. Getting to know you these past few days has really been special. I want to thank Alfred A. Knopf, my longtime publisher, and Deb Garrison, my editor there. She's been my editor for 20-some years, so this is really an honor. I want to thank my family, Nana, my mom, Mac, Addie, and my late father. I want to thank my friends, Cole, Richard, Melanie, Ingrid, and Christy, my rock. And I want to dedicate this, before I read a quick poem, to 3 people who the book is dedicated to, who died when I was finishing it. My Aunt Tootie, my Aunt Gail, and my grandmother, Mama Annie, who lived to be 101, and who blessed this book and all of us. So I'll end with this poem, and I thank you again. Snapdragon. Of late, the dead have quit their midnight visits. They ask to swing by sometime without ringing first. Thank you. No. Think I'll stay here, friends, in sunlight at the start of summer. The snapdragons and daylilies bright my son plucks. Down the road, the dandelions bloom in a garden of stone, a garland of souls. Like the vines, I'll climb, like children who join their limbs to the silver maples, waving to all who pass by. Thank you. Thanks again.
Well, once again, Kevin, congratulations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. The bar will remain open while the poets are signing. Thank you for coming, and see you next year. Good night.